Hey there everyone, and welcome to Bill's Retro Gaming Show. On today's video, we're going to be taking a look back at 2022 and see how Arcade1up did this year. Did they have a good year? Did they have a not so good year? What about all those leaks that came out of GameFly earlier in the year? Were they accurate? Were they completely off? Let's dive in and find out right after this. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time checking out the channel, be sure to hit that subscription button. Click the notification bell if you want to be notified every time I put up a new video. Give this one a thumbs up and leave a comment below if you want to be part of the conversation. Now, for those of you who've been following me for a little while, you may know that this is my first year as a YouTuber. I started my channel in early February of 2022, and I've been following Arcade1up this entire year. Now, one of the things that stood out to me early this year was leaks that came out of GameFly sometime back in April that kind of laid out the entire year of plans for what Arcade1up was planning on releasing. So, you know, being that this was my first year on YouTube, I wanted to take a minute and put a video together and just kind of look back at this year from my perspective as a first year really following them closely and just kind of see, you know, how'd they do? How were the GameFly leaks? Did they pan out? What about what was actually released? Were they good? Were they not so good? Hits, misses, you know, whatever. And I know all of you are going to have your own opinions on this for sure. So feel free to leave them in the comments below. There is no such thing as a bad opinion. If you think they had a fantastic year, that is awesome. If you think this year sucked for them and everything they released is crap, well, you're right too, because that's your opinion and you're entitled to it 100%. All right. But I'm just going to dive in from my perspective, and we're going to start at the beginning of the year and just go through where we are now. And like I said, let's see how they did. All right, so my first recollection for 2022 in terms of Arcade1up was CES. And at CES, they announced 3 legacy cabs that would be coming out sometime later that year. They announced this one, the Atari Legacy Centipede, the Bandai Namco Legacy, the Pac-Mania edition, and the Midway Legacy Mortal Kombat 30th edition. Now, at that time, they also announced the first in their Pro Series, the Killer Instinct machine. A little did we know how long it would take for this to actually come out, but believe it or not, this was announced way back at the beginning of the year around CES. So let's just take a minute and let's talk about those 4 machines to start off with. And let's go with the Killer Instinct Pro first, all right? And the Killer Instinct Pro, like I said, was announced at the beginning of the year. And the funny thing is, it was announced shortly after the release of the 3/4 Killer Instinct machine. That had not been out for very long when they said, hey, we're going to come out with a Pro line, and Killer Instinct is going to be the first one. It's not going to have a riser. It's going to be an almost full-size cab. It's going to have better controls on it, a 19-inch monitor, all this stuff, but no price was announced at its original announcement. Now, speculation ran that it would be around $1,000, and that speculation turned out to be right when they finally released it October of this year. At the very end of October, just a few weeks ago, they finally released it. They said that there were only going to be 500 available, that they were going to be $1,000, and it took them about a week, maybe a week and a half, to sell out of those 500. Now, whether or not you consider that good or bad is completely up to you. But for me, the interesting thing is, why did it take an entire year almost to actually put this out when it was announced back in the beginning of the year? Oddly enough, a few months ago, they actually took it off of their website before officially putting up the pre-order release on it. And even still, the machine itself is not even scheduled to ship until January of 2023. So not for another couple of months will people actually have these in their hands. So let me know what you guys think. Killer Instinct Pro, was that a hit or was that a miss for them? For me, I gotta say, definitely middle of the road. Like Killer Instinct is not one that I'm interested in, but it feels like kind of a miss for me if that's going to be your first pro line, that you take almost a year to come out with it. You announce there's only going to be 500. It takes you over a week to sell out of 500 cabs. You're not going to ship them for 2 months. I don't know. And besides that, at the time that you put those pre-orders up, you take the original Killer Instinct 3/4 cab and you knock the price way down on that to almost half what its original price was. I'm not sure what message that sends, all right? But, that's the first one that I wanted to talk about, was that Killer Instinct Pro, announced at the beginning of the year, didn't come out till almost the end, didn't get released till almost the end of the year, not shipping until the beginning of next year. So it's going to be basically a full year from announcement to the time that people actually get this in their hands. So let's move on to the other 3 that were announced at CES. The Pac-Mania, the Bandai Namco, the Atari Legacy, Centipede, and the Mortal Kombat 30th. Now again, announced in January, but didn't actually release until June of this year. So it took them almost 6 months to actually release 3 cabs that they announced in January. Why did it take that long for 3 cabs that we've known about since the beginning of the year to finally come out? And when they did actually come out, all 3 had TN monitors on them instead of the BOE monitors that people had grown accustomed to. So they were a lesser quality monitor. Now, some people didn't seem to care about that. Some people, that was a sticking point and it was a reason not to purchase them. So again, what do you think? Was that a good thing for them or a bad thing for them that you take 6 months to release something and then release it with not great monitors? Right now, they did have some other upgrades to them, and I did a video earlier this year on the difference between last year's models and this year's models in terms of the Legacies. The fact that each one comes with a couple more games than the ones from last year. The fact that they all have Wi-Fi enabled, at least for leaderboards. Some like the Mortal Kombat with online play, although again, the Mortal Kombat 30th does not have lobbies, and the Wi-Fi, the online play, from what I've seen people report, has been hit or miss on how good it is. So, take that for what it is, all right? What do you think? Was that good for them or was that bad for them? All right, moving on, let's talk about the next thing that got announced, and that was the NBA Jam Shack Edition. Now, this was announced in February of this year. As a matter of fact, it was announced at Super Bowl weekend. Not going to get into that whole thing of, announcing a basketball cab on Super Bowl weekend. Just, that's when it was announced, all right? And this was announced as the first of their official XL cabs. Now, different from the Pro cab, the Killer Instinct Pro cab, similar size, but, similar size machine, a 19-inch monitor, standard controls, does not have upgraded controls like the Pro series does. So really, you're talking about the size factor being the same, with the Pro, supposedly having some upgraded additions to it, better monitor, better controls, things like that. And again, this one was announced in February, but didn't actually release until August of this year. So this took 7 months, basically 6 or 7 months again, for this to actually come out and be in people's hands. So what do you think? Hit or miss? Again, 19-inch monitor, but it was a 19-inch TN monitor. So, not a great monitor on this thing. You can even tell it from the picture here that, there's washout just looking at this picture on it. Now, again, some people that doesn't bother. Some people it's a sore point. It all depends on who you are, how you play it, and whatever. If you're head on with it, it's fine. If you're off to the side, it causes issues. Things like that. Again, we don't have to get into that other than to talk about that in respect of how well do you think Arcade1up did with their releases this year. So announced in February, doesn't come out till August, has some concessions like a lower brand monitor in it, at a higher price point, $600. Normally $700. It's on sale right now for $600, but it came out at $700. So what do you think? Was this a good release for Arcade1up or a bad release? I'm, in the middle on this. I don't think this was really awful, But, had they put a better monitor in it, I think this would have been a hit for them for sure, because I know people want the bigger form factor, the no risers, things like that. All right, so moving on, this is the other XL machine that released earlier this year, and this is the Golden Tee 3D edition. Now, even though the Shack was announced first in February, this one actually released first in March of this year. So this was the first chance that people actually had to get their hands on one of Arcade1up's newer XL machines. Bigger form factor, no riser, 19-inch monitor on it. Again, this one came with that TN monitor. This was actually the first machine that they released that we got a glimpse of that 19-inch TN monitor. And oof, boy, did people complain about that. So again, I got to say, I think this is a step in the right direction for Arcade1up from my personal perspective. Going with these XL machines is probably a step in the right direction. Bigger form factor, no riser, bigger screen. The problem is those particular monitors. If they can get away from those 19-inch TNs and stick with BOEs, which, going back to the Killer Instinct Pro, something that they were able to source for the Killer Instinct Pro ultimately was a 19-inch BOE. If they can do that and move on to these XL form factors going forward, I think that will be a good thing. But in terms of this year, again, I don't know. I'm on the fence about this one as well. It's a plus and minus for me. I think the form factor is fantastic. I think the monitor brings it down, as well as the pricing on it. If these could come in at a lower pricing with a better monitor, I think these would be a hit for Arcade1up. But for this year, it's a middle of the road for me. I wouldn't call it a complete miss. I wouldn't call it an out of the park. It's a middle of the road for how well they did with the release of their first XL monitors for this year. All right, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, in April, we did get this huge leak come out of GameFly on a bunch of cabinets that were supposedly coming from Arcade1up, or throughout the year. And I'm just gonna go right ahead and give you a spoiler alert right up front. They were pretty much dead on. Other than one machine, which we still think is coming, just not this year. Just about everything that was in that GameFly leak, including the timing for when they would come out and pricing, was pretty much dead on. Couple of things off here and there. Some things got pushed back, some pricing changed, but for the most part, they were pretty much dead on. Now, one of the things that was announced during those leaks was something called a Couchcade from Arcade1up. Now, no idea what a Couchcade was, or how that was going to work until we finally saw this. And this is the Atari version. They released two versions of these Couchcades. One was a Pac-Man version, and that released at the end of March. And then this one, the Atari one, was at the beginning of April. So within a couple of weeks of each other, we got these two Couchcades. They come with 10 games. They come with a little puck that you plug into your TV, and then you can sit on your couch with this little beanbag controller and play these games. Now, again, whether or not you think this was a good thing for Arcade1up or a bad thing is completely up to you. For me, these hold no value at all. Not interested in something like this to play at all. I just don't see the interest in them personally. But, maybe some of you out there thought that this was kind of a neat idea. This, to me, feels like something that they tried that maybe didn't go over as well as they expected. So, will we see more Couchcades in the future? I don't know. Maybe. We'll have to wait and see what their plans are for 2023. But, they released two at the beginning of this year and then nothing else throughout the rest of the year. So if they have plans for any more of these, we probably won't know till next year sometime. All right, so that's going to take us through about the first half of the year. That was everything that actually released within the beginning of the year. Now, some of the stuff, like I said, was announced and then released later, like the Shack Edition NBA Jam, announced in February, didn't release until August. Killer Instinct Pro, again, we know just came out recently, but those were the machines for the most part that came out at the beginning of the year. Now, I do believe there were some upgraded Partycades that also came out early in the year, a Ms. Pac-Man and a Pac-Man one. I'm not going to touch on those too much, other than to say the Partycades are actually pretty cool. For the most part, if you like that form factor, they're all pretty good. So I don't really have anything negative to say about those. It's always good to see them release more of those. That's one of those things that I think they hit on a good form factor with the Partycade, and they continue to release them, as opposed to, say, something like the Couchcades, which I think maybe didn't go over so well, so we may not see those ever again. You know, we'll just have to wait and see on those. But that takes us through about the first half of the year. So now we're going to hit the second half of the year, and let's start off with this one. All right, and this is Dragon's Lair. Now, Dragon's Lair was actually announced, I believe, in early 2021 from Arcade1up, and then they kind of pulled it and it went on the back burner. And part of the reason it went on the back burner was because of the scoring screen up here. Their original plan was to basically have a hole there that you could put, like, say, your cell phone in with an app or whatever to keep track of the scoring, and they quickly realized that people weren't interested in that at all. So they kind of pulled this, went back to the drawing board, and figured out a way that they could source a scoring screen that would work for this, which was part of the holdup for it. Now, ultimately, this did wind up getting released, I think, somewhere in the first half of the year, maybe April or May. I think maybe May. They announced that this was going to be up for pre-order, and they finally released it. It started shipping towards the end of July. Now, for me, this is probably one of, if not the best machine, I think, that they released this year. I don't own it personally. I'm just going off of form factor, what I've seen in reviews, what people have said. It's on my list. It's one that I would love to pick up at some point. I just haven't had an opportunity to do it yet. Now, I know people have complained about audio issues towards the end of the game, some screen tearing during it. So there are some things that are not 100% right with this machine, but in terms of the form factor, in terms of the overall look and feel of it, for me, this is actually one of their best machines of the year. And I'm going to call this one a hit for them, for sure. That this was a good machine for them to release this year. Again, leave me your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe you think some of the issues like the audio drop caused this one to be a miss. Maybe you were so excited about this one and you got completely deflated when it had certain issues. Unfortunately, it does not have Wi-Fi enabled on it, so pushing updates to it is going to be a trick for this. It's something that can be done with a download to a thumb drive plugged into a USB port, but hey, look, this has been out since July. People have been complaining since then. It doesn't seem like Arcade1up has any interest in pushing any updates to this machine at all. So again, take that for what it's worth. All right, that may make this one a miss for you. Not sure, but you know, let me know what your thoughts. So this was a machine that got announced over a year ago, finally released in July of this year. All right, next up we have two other Legacy cabs that got announced and came out again in the middle of the year. These came out right around the same time as the Shack XL in August. This is the Capcom Legacy Yoga Flame Edition. They also released this in a second skin that was a retail-only one. Companies like Shop Hippo and others have the Shinko Hadouken version of this, which is a similar art style and a more blue color scheme than this orangey yellow color scheme of the Yoga Flame. But beyond that, it's the same machine. Just like the other Legacies that came out earlier in the year, this has 14 games. This has Wi-Fi enabled. But unlike those, this does have the BOE monitors in them instead of the TN monitors. So you have this one, and you had a Ms. Pac-Man. And let me show you what that looked like. So that's this one here. This is the Bandai Namco Ms. Pac-Man that came out this year. Both of these machines are Wi-Fi enabled. The Capcom Legacy allows for online play. The Ms. Pac-Man is basically leaderboards because there aren't too many games on here that are two-player games. And in terms of these two, again, I think they did really well with these. I like the form factor on them. I like the games list for the most part. The Yoga Flame one really stood out to me. I really enjoyed the games list on that. Again, that is one that is on my wish list to pick up at some point, possibly when it goes on some kind of clearance or better deals. I may wind up picking that one up. The Ms. Pac-Man for me was a little too Pac-Man heavy. I kind of liked last year's Class of 81 better in terms of the lineup because I'm more of a Galaxian fan. I would have liked to have seen more of those kind of games on here. But, you know, the fact that they had the, 14 games on them, the fact that they have this better form factor, the fact that they have the better monitors on them, push these above the other legacy machines that got announced and released earlier in the year. It's all about that monitor. If those other machines had had the BOE monitors in them, I think they would have been a much better release for Arcade1up. This was the right way to do it. So again, why they went with those TN monitors, whether it was a sourcing thing or whether it was trying to save money, I don't know. Leave that up to you guys to decide what you think the real reason behind it was. It's been talked about so much. Again, other than to say this is a year in review, so we're hitting all this stuff as a year in review to decide how they did. So what did you think about these? Again, for me, these were better than the ones that got released before. I think these are great machines. I think they did a good job with these. But, the games list for the Ms. Pac-Man is a little lackluster to me. And for some of you, I understand that the Yoga Flame game machine, you would have liked to have seen more fighters on it. I kind of like the fact that it wasn't so fire heavy, personally. Let me know your thoughts. Were these good releases for Arcade1up, or were these misses as well? All right, and we are getting close to the end in our year in review with the last two cabs to be announced and to be released this year. The first one being NFL Blitz, which came out towards the end of September. Now, obviously, NFL Blitz, there was huge speculation about this. They have been talking about this one coming out for several years now with no official announcement until this year when this finally got released. This is one that a lot of people have been wanting for a very, very long time. Unfortunately, there are some concessions with this. Again, it's a decent look. It's a decent form factor for this. Whether or not you like the side art is, again, up to opinion or not. But this does have the 3 games on it: the NFL Blitz, Blitz 99, and Blitz 2000 on it. Again, unfortunately, they did have to make some concessions. They had to take out one of the key features of the Blitz games, late hits, mostly because the NFL would not allow them to release it without removing that feature from it. Also, this is supposed to be Wi-Fi enabled. This is supposed to allow for online play, and at launch, it did not. Now, they've recently put a patch out that adds online play to the original NFL Blitz game. 99 and 2000 still do not have online play, but the original Blitz does. I talked about this recently in a video. Again, it's been up and down in reports on whether or not the online play is fantastic or whether or not it's laggy and stuttery. Some of that may come down to the way it's implemented in the cab. Some of that may come down to your personal setup. I don't know. Other than to say that there's been reports up and down both sides of the spectrum. Probably, like I said in that video, it's somewhere in the middle where it's decent but not perfect, all right? But, the fact that it didn't have online play from the start, the fact that it's taken over a month to get it for one game has been a very sore subject for a lot of people on this. So, again, this one has kind of been all over the board, I think, for a lot of people. Some people just love the fact that they actually were able to accomplish bringing Blitz out, period, even with the issues. And some people think it was just a total disaster. Again, I'm middle of the road with this one. I'm trying not to put my opinion too much into all of these, just to throw this out there and get people talking about what you guys think in terms of what Arcade1up did. NFL Blitz isn't one that I have a lot of interest in, so I don't have a huge opinion on this. Because other than to say, I do think not having online play was a miss for them. So again, let me know in the comments below what you guys think on this. Was this a hit? Was this a miss? For me, I don't have any personal real interest in Blitz as an arcade game, so it doesn't really affect me personally, other than to say that I think not having Wi-Fi enabled, having to make the concession of taking out late hits, makes this one kind of over towards the miss section for me personally. in terms of the release of this, but hey, you may feel differently. You may feel that, the concessions they had to make just to get this out are totally worth it because it's Blitz. All right? But let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and let's move on to the last one to be released so far this year. And that, of course, would be Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Now, this is one of the ones that I own. This is one of the ones that I have been looking forward to for a very long time. Again, very much like Blitz, this is one of those ones that people have been speculating about, wondering would Arcade1up ever actually release this. And then earlier this year at EVO, they announced this was coming out, and then it finally released at the beginning of October. Now, I jumped on that. I didn't jump on this during the first round of pre-orders. I waited a couple of weeks and I jumped on it the second round of pre-orders. But I did pre-order it and I did get it rather quickly, unlike some people, unfortunately. So here's the thing with this one. I did my review on this. I gave it a pretty favorable review. I think overall, I'm enjoying it personally, but I do understand that there are issues with this cab. Again, just like Blitz, this is missing online play for the marquee title Marvel vs. Capcom 2. And to this day, it is still missing online play with no idea of when that might be coming. Now, every other game on this cabinet, other than the console games, has online play enabled. And they have been making, they actually have been making updates to this to make the experience better for people. So for me, it's good that they are continuing to add updates to this. I would like to know when we'll have online play for Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but it's not a huge deal breaker for me personally. Some of the other issues like audio stuttering, the audio lowering on its own, I'm hoping that's something they can fix in a patch. I don't know if it's possible or not, or if the audio is just really not that great on it. So there's that. In terms of that, too, the pre-release on this was just kind of a mess with the way that they handled the pre-orders on it, with it selling out quickly. Then they found more. Then it's then they released more, and then it sold out again, and all of this. And I know people who I personally know people who pre-ordered it and are still waiting from Arcade1up, who are still waiting for theirs, while other people were able to get it from retail stores, practically by basically by walking into the store and walking out with it. So that's something to keep in mind with a lot of this as well. So again, for those of you who own this or who were interested in getting this, who missed out on this, what do you think? Was this a hit or a miss? Again, pluses and minuses to this one. For me personally, I'm enjoying it. I think it's a great machine. I like it a lot. I have no intentions of getting rid of it, but I do agree that the no online play, that the pre-order issues, that the audio issues do bring this down a little bit in terms of, how good it is. All right. Now, the last thing I just want to touch on real quick before I do like a final wrap up to this is one cabinet that was part of the GameFly leaks that did not come out this year. And it was the only one on the list that did not come out this year. And that is Time Crisis. Now, Time Crisis was part of the GameFly leaks. It was speculated to come out at about $800, and we have yet to actually see, and it was supposed to come out sometime in October, but we've yet to actually see that come out. Now, we did get a leaked photo from Arcade1up of a Time Crisis cab, and again, some people liked it, some people thought it looked awful. The fact that it has two guns but one pedal, there was a lot of things. Again, I did a video on that, so I'm not going to rehash that, other than to say that that one was speculated to come out and has not yet. Now, I think we will still see that. Keep an eye out. I plan on doing another video very soon on CES and speculation for next year or an early next year, and I think that's probably something that we will see. So I'll talk about that more then. I'll only bring it up to complete the picture on the GameFly leaks and to say that they were pretty accurate other than that one. And I think that when those leaks came out that it probably was planned for this year, but they pulled it for other reasons. Maybe monitor issues, maybe, something else that they needed to tweak to get it right before they wanted to announce it officially. All right, so my final thoughts on this year for Arcade1up. Well, it looks like they came out with about a dozen different cabs this year, plus some things like the couch cades, the collector cades that I didn't get into, some refreshes on party cades, you know, things like that. So they came out somewhere with like between 12 and 15 machines throughout the year. So was that good for Arcade1up? Well, I believe in prior years they've come out with more than that. So this does seem like a lower amount of machines that they've released in this year. Now, does some of that have to do with the fact that we, you know, are just coming out of COVID, that there have been supply chain issues, things like that? Maybe. Did they make a conscious decision to release less machines this year? Maybe. You know, unfortunately, that's not for me to say because I don't have that kind of inside information. But I wanted to put this out. I wanted to do a year in review. I just wanted to go over everything that Arcade1up had released this year and then leave it in your guys' hands. What do you think? Do you think Arcade1up had a good year? Do you think they had a so-so year? Do you think they had a lousy year? For me personally, I would say they had a so-so year. I think they had a couple of really nice machines come out this year. I think they had a couple of not-so-great machines come out this year. I think with some of those Legacies, the fact that they're TN monitors, for me personally, if I were going to get one, I'm going to wait and see what they do in 2023 because I have a funny feeling that they're going to announce similar machines for next year and do refreshes on them. All right. But other than that, yeah, that's it. And of course, the other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to just kind of go over the GameFly leaks again and see how did they do in terms of that. And like I said, for the most part, they were dead on. The only machine that got announced during that didn't actually come out was Time Crisis. And again, I think that was probably supposed to come out and got pulled for whatever reason. So now we have to wait and we have to see what happens early next year. We know there's going to be some announcements come CES time. Now, whether or not they're actually going to have a presence at CES, from what I'm hearing, they're not, other than the fact that they may be there in terms of talking to people, but whether or not they're going to have an actual booth to show anything off doesn't seem like it. But I think that there will be some online announcements at CES. So that's probably the next thing that we have to look forward to from Arcade1up. And I am planning a speculation video on what I think that's going to be. All right. But that's going to do it for this, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please leave me some comments below. What do you think? How did Arcade1up do for you this year? Did they have a good year? Did you enjoy any of the machines that came out that you picked up? Did you think they were all awful? Did you hold off on buying any this year? Let me know, all right? That's going to do it for this video, and I will see you guys again soon. Have a great day.